Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode number 161 of the Backlot 605 podcast. Here we are in week number 2 of Brian De Palma December. It's De Palma December going on all month long here at Backlot 605. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman. Joined with me, as always, are my co-hosts Brian Mensing.
What's up?
And Sam Lenz.
Hey, how's it going?
Wow, he's got the I'm being telefeed from like London delay going on here.
Oh God, am I really that delayed?
I think it was just your reaction, Sam.
Okay. To me, I'm like, I don't know.
Do you need some coffee or you good? Caffeine?
No, I actually feel pretty good tonight.
You good? Okay.
All things considered, yeah.
All right. No one was making fun of you in the shower today or anything? We're good?
No, I didn't get pelted with tampons today, so I consider it a win.
I thought you were about to say you didn't take a shower today. I think that's a different conversation we might have to talk about after the show.
Yeah.
That is
No,
why we
I like
have
showering
these remotely.
too much to skip a day.
Well, I'm going to ask our guest this question if he likes showering as well, because showers are going to be a topic of today's show because we're talking about Carrie from 1976. We are joined on this episode very aptly because he is Ken's King Collection. The king in that is Stephen King. The Ken in it is Ken Creamer.
Nice shirt. Love it.
I personally shower if you're in a rush, but I'm more of a bath kind of person. So.
Oh God, yes, me too. Ugh.
He's like, where's my lilac petals and my incense and
Yeah.
A little
My
exfoliating
candles.
salt. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You put a little bath salt in there, and you soak up, and I don't know.
There's a reason Carrie takes a bath at the end of this movie instead of a shower. That's for sure.
That's true.
Oh my God, I want I'm sure some Etsy store makes them, but now I want a Carrie bath bomb.
There is definitely a Carrie bath bomb. Who knows what's inside that bath bomb, though? We know what color it is.
Purple. It's out there.
We're there. We're already on. We're talking about it on this show. Ken, let's talk a little bit about Ken's King Collection. I see the collection right behind you for our video watchers. Talk a little bit about your collection and your history with Mr. Stephen King.
I've been collecting for 30 plus years. My mom and my sister both were kind of big readers back in the day, and they kind of got me into reading pretty young. Started reading Firestarter, I think, when I was like 12, and just went from there. And I've been just going ever since. And I collect variant covers as well, so it's not just like I have one edition. I'll have the movie tie-in edition of Carrie and the French edition of Carrie. The Young Reader's Voice edition of Carrie, and the 1980s edition version of Carrie. So I've got the variety of covers. So that's why there's so many of them. So, but yeah, in total, I have about 416 books, magazine, comic books, periodicals about Stephen King, written by Stephen King, etc. So yeah, it's quite an extensive collection.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Ken's the go-to guy for Stephen King knowledge. I can just see that right behind you. So then I'm going to ask the impossible question then, Ken. What's your favorite Stephen King book, and what's your favorite Stephen King movie adaptation?
And why is it Christine?
Christine's in my top 3, but it's not my number 1. But my 2 favorite books is actually flips back and forth. It's either between it and The Stand. Those are my 2 favorite ones. And I read them both in high school, actually a couple of different times over the years. And I just really enjoyed those. And then the movies came out for them, the made-for-TV movies. And as for the movie adaptations, that would probably be some of my favorites, those 2 made-for-TV movies. They're not the best, but they have a special place in my heart just for where they fell in my life at that time. And it was great to see it on TV when they were airing.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
picks. I
Nick
think no one.
Garrison's The Stand is fun. I like it.
Yeah,
a
I was
lot.
going to say no one talks about The Stand anymore.
And they did the remake.
I would say even with the remake, they barely were talking about The Stand. And there was like some good people in that, and I wanted to see it, and well, I didn't have Paramount at the time to watch it.
It was good. They changed a couple of things, but it's always different. He wrote a brand new ending for it, so it was a different ending, which was kind of different. I enjoyed it, but there were some people who really just they love one version, and that's the only one that they can picture, and it's the one in their head, and they're never going to see it. For me, I just kind of pretend each, the difference between this version and the book, and then the other made-for-TV one. They're all different universes, and they're different versions of the same story, and I can enjoy them all equally.
Right.
100%.
Well, today's Stephen King adaptation that we were talking about is also, a Brian De Palma film. Very early in De Palma's career, very early in the King adaptations as well. Maybe is it the first adaptation of a
I
King
think so.
novel?
It was. It's actually his first book that got published, not his first book that he wrote, but the
Mhm.
first one that got published. And I believe that was in 1974. And the movie came out in 76, right? So, yeah, I think it
Yep.
would have to have been his first one ever.
And when they released the trailer, he was such a new writer on the scene that they actually spelled his name wrong in the trailer of Carrie.
I do actually think there's
Steven.
some collectible
Yep.
posters out there.
Even posters. That's cool. Ah, gosh, it's awesome to have a King fan on the show. Like,
Sam's like, I want one of
'cause
those posters.
yeah, I'm right there with you. I grew up on King. I love it. Carrie was one of my first. Christine was my actual first, and from there I was just hooked, and that's remains to this day my favorite. But yeah, Carrie is such a. I don't know. Carrie is incredibly. Well, I mean, we'll get into it, but it's so ahead of its time. Honestly, oh my god, I love this.
Carrie and
I love this
Firestarter,
book.
those
I
are-
love this movie. Yeah.
Carrie and Firestarter in the 80s were two that they always showed on repeat on HBO if you had cable in the 80s for some reason. And so I just, Firestarter was another one that I was a big fan of back in the 80s.
Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, let's go round horn to kind of start the Carrie conversation with everybody's history with either the book, the movie, whichever came first for us on the show here. I can start because I'm not a good reader. I'm just not an avid reader. So my version of King is always leaned towards film. That's where I am always introduced to King storylines, and this is a very early one that I watched as well. I watched this in high school when I was really getting into horror, and it's like, all right, let's check off the list of horror movies that I've never seen. Finally, you get down to Carrie. It's like, all right, let's watch Carrie. It's probably on Netflix. I think at that time when I first watched it, and yeah, I was just blown away by this movie. Came out in 76, has 70s. Obviously, you can tell style because of the character style. It's 70s, but everything else is like, no, this could be told in any era at any time. It is a timeless movie, and because of that King, original source material, I'm sure, and then De Palma adapting it very early in his career. Yeah, I think this is such a fascinating movie to look at, especially looking at where those two guys have gone since then, and everybody else in this movie as well. Like, this is a big start for a lot of people in this movie. Sometimes I forget how many people are in this movie that would go on to major stardom after it. But yeah, my history with Carrie started about in high school then.
Yeah, I always look at this film and I always forget that this is pre-Saturday Night Fever John Travolta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is one of early Travolta roles.
Yeah.
Very, very early.
And this is like right around Welcome Back Carter time frame still.
Ooh.
Early.
Who would have thought that John Travolta did TV at one point? For me, when it comes to King, I'm with Casey. I tend to lean more towards film versus reading because reading is hard some days. But I can say that there's been at least a couple of books I've read. At one point, before Amazon bought Audible, and I've yet to figure out what my credentials are to unlock the DRM. I have all of the audiobooks for Stephen King from the beginning all the way through when he was working with Peter Straub. So I literally have like the entire collective, but I can't access them because they don't remember what my credentials are. And out of all of those books, the only one I actually listened to was Salem's Lot. But of the stuff that I have read from beginning to end, is this one that I found in high school.
Oh.
And this is one that this is one of the ones that I actually had to have somebody help me find because this is the one that was printed before one of the stories was removed.
Mm-hmm.
The Bachman books has the story of the Rage that was removed from the series and is no longer in print after Stephen King removed it from print due to Columbine, because it involves in regards to a school shooting. And it's one of those stories that you're like, that would be great to be made in a movie, and then real life happened. You're like, I'm so glad they've never made that into a movie,
Right.
because it's a very good story. But this has also got the Running Man in it. That is from what I'm hearing, is they're readapting correctly into a modern version of this, and this is the version of a Running Man. As much as I like Schwarzenegger's, this is the version I want to see, because this is an amazing version of the story.
Does that one have
So-
Thinner in it too?
Yes, this has got Rage,
I
The
was about to
Long
say.
Walk. No, I take that back. No, this predates when they added Thinner to the collection.
Oh,
So this is
okay.
just the Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, and Running Man.
Interesting.
So
I think Thinner is
all
my
of these
favorite
are
of his Bachman works, but yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really cool.
So
Um,
I highly recommend anybody checking this one out.
yeah. I mean, I grew up on King. I found Christine at my local library, like, I don't know, when I was 7th or 8th grade. I think it would have been 8th grade, and just fell in love from there. I was always reading. I always had my nose in a King book from then on. And Carrie was just one of my favorites. It's one of the King books that I've revisited the most. Most recently, I've actually listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Sissy Spacek. And I couldn't recommend that enough because it's so good. She's incredible. And it's such a weird novel because it predates Columbine, but like a lot of what this movie, or a lot of what this book and this movie deal with, are things that are very applicable to now. And I think that's why this story in particular has stood the test of time, because it's something that's kind of real and kind of scary now, in the world that we live in. And yeah, I don't know. This is definitely one of my first King books. I remember always taking the DVD over to friends' houses and getting weird looks from parents when the movie that the weird kid brought over was Carrie. But you know, it was great. You know, I'd watch Carrie. I'd never get invited to that person's house again because they'd all hate it. Then I'd find different people to go show Carrie.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Ken, what about you? What's your history with Carrie?
Carrie particularly was, I think, probably my third book that I read. When I first started, I stuck to the thinner ones. No pun intended there. So it was like Firestarter and Carrie and Salem's Lot, because those are all about the same size, book wise. And so yeah, those were just the ones I picked out because I could read them a little faster, and that got me into his bigger work. But yeah, I was probably 14 at the time I read that one, and then I wasn't familiar with the movie, actually, surprisingly. I mean, it had been on, but I never paid attention to it because I didn't know who Stephen King was. I was just a kid, and it's like, it's a movie, whatever, color whatever I'm doing. And so I actually went back and rewatched it. I'm like, this is a good movie. I can actually, even in high school, relate to some of the stuff that's going on here. So I wished I had powers like Carrie several times in my life. Her and Firestarter. He has a thing for women who has psychic powers, and just young people in general with psychic powers. He puts that into a lot of his stories, and I think that's kind of really a cool theme that goes throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as for Rage, I wanted to say something about that. I would love to get my hands on one of the standalone copies of that. If you ever come across one, there's a UK one and a US one. They go for hundreds and thousands of dollars. I've seen.
I was gonna say,
just insane.
I've never seen one, and even this one, it took me forever to find a copy of this. I used to have this. It was stolen from me. An old coworker of mine happened to find it at a thrift store for 25 cents.
Nice.
And I was like, yes, please. because she braided to me. She goes, "I found your book." I'm like, "What do I owe you?" She's like, "Nothing." I'm like, "Really? What'd you pay for it?" She's like, "I paid $0.25 for it. You can have it. Don't worry about the quarter."
Good find. Good find.
Yep.
That's a great find. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the movie, 1976. Brian De Palma. Let's talk about the cast first and foremost before we jump into the movie. Everybody knows the plot of Carrie. We don't need to recap the plot of the movie. You know the movie. You've seen
Are
it.
you sure?
You at least know the story of Carrie. Girl gets picked on in high school, gets invited to the prom, gets pig blood dumped on top of her, and then murders everybody in the school.
Justifiably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
who wouldn't?
And she's the
Yeah.
hero we all root for by the end of it. And has
Now there's no proof that everybody picks on her. There might have been some casualty. I'm just kidding.
No, they all deserved it. They were all laughing at her. So the film stars Sissy Spacek, Piper Laurie, John Travolta, William Katz, Nancy Allen, P.J. Souls, just to name some of the big head honchos of this movie here. Yeah, let's talk about the movie opening right away, because I think this movie, that's one thing that really always stood out to me watching this movie. The handful of times I've seen it, is the opening, because we don't get anything except we're just kind of thrown into the movie. There's no big build up to Carrie going to school or packing her bag or introduction to her mom. It's like, no, we're thrown into gym class, and 30 seconds later we're thrown into the locker room and shower scene. Like, it's like that. It's so fast. It's such a fast paced introduction, and I think, I don't know. Did the novel start that way as well, or is that something De Palma did to change it up a little bit?
That actually follows
that's
the novel.
absolutely the start of the book. Yeah, this is one of the more faithful adaptations of a King novel, actually. Weirdly enough, it's
Although
it stays pretty close, anyways.
surprisingly, Stephen King actually thinks De Palma's version is a lighter version, and is almost not as graphic. And I don't know if you saw the 2013 version of Carrie, but the car crash scene in that one is actually a little more closer to what's in the book, and he thought that was actually a little closer to it. But yeah, I definitely prefer the original. But yeah, he thought it was a little bit of a lighter take on his book.
That's interesting, because I find this movie very dark, but it's interesting that he did single out the car crash sequence, because that is the one thing in the 2013 one that I'm like, they managed to do that better. And then it's other than that, it's essentially the same movie. And I'm like, I mean, when you credit the screenwriter of the 76 version, because you literally just copy paste entire scenes from it and add cell phones, I was like, I was expecting something more from this, you know? I mean, it's a frustrating watch for me.
Is that where Eli Roth got the idea of redoing Cabin Fever again with the same script?
Yeah,
It might have
probably,
been.
because his remake of Cabin Fever literally came out like 2 years later. So
I was going to say, that was about the same time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's also a movie that makes you try to buy that Chloe Grace Moretz is the ugly girl in high school that no one would want to hang out with. I'm like, sure.
Also, I hate the end tag that they try to make a riff on the grave popping scene, and the grave cracks from the ground up. I'm like, she's not a superhero. This is a tragedy. And you just like all of a sudden are like, oh, we're going to make it like Marvel. It's so badass. Look, she's coming. I'm like, no, get out of here.
Did you stay for the after credit scene of that one where it says Carrie will return?
Yeah.
Carrie 2.
Anyway,
let's Carrie 2, but let's not go there.
Someday we will talk about Carrie 2 on this show.
I'm completely okay with that, actually. I'm completely okay with that.
I don't hate that movie. Anyway, let's talk about the good version, 1976. Yeah, the opening of this movie, it feels, I don't know, it almost feels like we're peeping on something we should not be seeing. I mean, it's a high school girls' locker room. They're just running around completely naked. And
yeah, for a high school gym, scene and whatnot. It's a little graphic for you. You almost feel like you're like, I shouldn't be even looking at this.
At least they all look and are old enough in this movie. It was the
Yeah.
70s where we're supposed to buy that people in their 30s were
Yeah.
17 years
Yeah.
old. It's okay.
That is the one thing it has going for it. You're looking at these women and you're like, yeah, you're on the verge of almost 40 playing a 18-year-old person.
John Travolta was in high school for about 10 years at this point, and he would stay there for another 4, so that's good.
Yep.
But the opening of this movie is obviously one of the most iconic. Everything I think really is iconic in this movie, but it's such an iconic opening to this movie. It feels like a dream that we're thrown into with Carrie in the shower and the introduction to the entire storyline, the catalyst for the rest of the movie. There's one thing that stands out about it to me every time is whenever is it Sue, the girl that first starts picking on Carrie and starts throwing the tampons, that kind of has a change of heart by the end of this, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Whenever she's introduced, I think it's such a great introduction for her because she is the one leading the charge of let's throw tampons at Carrie in the shower. And it's such a great character arc throughout this movie. I don't know. I love her in this movie. And I think, again, the acting in this movie is great all around. Like Nancy
Amy
Allen
Irving as
especially
Sue
is
Snell is incredible. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then
Amy
Nancy
Irving.
Allen is such a, you're like, oh my God, I hate you. I hate you so much. You're going to get what's coming to
She
you. I know.
she also has one of the funniest blowjob scenes in the history of cinema. I
Oh, you mean
Where
the
she's
the
I
part?
talking
think it's
during
the
it.
funniest thing. Yep. Just oh Billy. Oh Bill,
Mhm.
like how are you talking right now? What is this?
That right there is what we call talent.
Yeah.
She's a
It-
ventriloquist.
either there's talent there or enough room.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
go
remember
with option B there, Brian.
when we got to that scene. One, Kayla said, yeah, how is she talking right now? And I was like, 2, I don't remember this scene from Grease. It's all an origin story for Danny Zuko. That's what this movie is. What
Yeah.
are your guys' thoughts about the
John Travolta before he loses that like thick accent of his.
Mhm. It's before he goes on vacation, before senior year of high school, and completely changes his life after that. We get it. And
Yeah.
He had to. You know, they had to regraft all that skin. After the car blew up.
What are your guys' thoughts on the opening of this movie?
I mean, I love it. I think none of us are women. I would presume none of us have had our period before, right? Like,
Presume correctly.
Yeah. So I can only imagine what it's like to not know you're supposed to have your period and all of a sudden you're bleeding. Like how frightening would that be for a person? And I think the way this is shot, so dreamlike leading up to this, and the music is just really glittery and flowy. And then you see the blood and the music drops out and all you hear is that shower running and your gut just drops. Like, at least I don't know. Like to me, it's one of the most emotionally devastating moments in this movie. That's full of emotionally devastating moments because you see it, and especially rewatching it, you know where all of this goes, and it's just heartbreaking because it's literally the start of everything that is going to, unfortunately, like just ruin this girl's life. Like,
Yeah.
and it just, this opening sets the tone of this movie perfectly. It's a little campy. It's a little, but it also has like a
Foreshadowy.
dark undertone to it. Yeah. Like obviously like King's references are a little on the nose. Oh, she has her period. Oh, they dump pig's blood on her. It's blood, and like, okay, we get it. But like, it doesn't
also
make it
makes
any less
sense.
effective. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was going to say it also makes sense for the characters because you look at the characters that dump the pig blood on her at the end. Yeah, that's what they're going for too because the word spreads around the entire school by the time we get to the next scene where she's sitting outside the principal's office. Everybody in the school knows. We know how high school rumors work. I mean, look at back then even it's worse now with technology, but back then word was spreading really fast and obviously that's that's what the characters were going for too. I don't think it's like King bashing on the head. Kind of is, but I think it's more so character-wise, it works and makes a lot of sense too.
Well, it definitely sets up, who you're supposed to root for and who you're supposed to hate right away, because you watch it and at first you're like, oh, ha, ha, ooh, no, we hate those ladies. No, they're not. That's not right, and it just sets the tone for the rest of the movie from there.
And by the end of the scene, you already see the seeds of remorse in Sue.
She starts already regretting it right away.
And Amy Irving is just so good at like showing that arc, even just through that scene. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's so cool. Sorry, Brian, what?
I get where everything was going and why and how it sets everything up for the remainder of the film and whatnot. My biggest qualm with this, and just in general, even from the very beginning, is that regardless if you have that one person who's quote unquote the outcast of the school and whatnot, not every single human being in that locker room is going to take the side of let's pick on her kind of thing, sort of, out to the point of you have to have the teacher come in to basically rescue you, kind of thing, where it's like, like nowadays you see those where it's like the clique of the 4 or 5 girls or something like that that's always picking on someone and whatnot, not necessarily an entire school, if you will, where it just feels for me it takes it out a little bit to know like what kind of place are we trying to show in the school that literally an entire school of hundreds of kids are going to be picking on that one girl, sort of thing.
Not even just the kids, it was the teachers too.
Yeah. Well, we all know those teachers. We all had those teachers. They were dickheads, and they're still probably dickheads. Anyway,
Yep.
Not to bring up, things from our high school past, but I think the movie does a good job of we're in Carrie's perspective this entire movie. And even in this opening, some of the girls are not as into it as the other ones. Mm-hmm. You can tell they're getting into it because it's like, oh, peer pressure. This is kind of fun, funny. As soon as the teacher shows up, it's all right, we stop, except for Nancy Allen is really still the one that keeps, and PJ Souls a little bit too, of like, let's continue to do this. Because, like Sam said, you immediately see the remorse on Sue's face of, oh no, what did I just start? Like, this was kind of funny at the beginning, but it's like, oh, Carrie actually has no idea what's happening to her body right now. What did I just do?
Yeah.
Which I can see in a high schooler's mindset why you would think it's funny at first, and then you have this remorse on the other end, and then we get the nice kind of balance of that with Nancy Allen's Chris, who just doubles down throughout this entire movie, even when we get to their punishment, which, again, this movie has a lot of quirky, weird moments. That's one of the biggest ones is the punishment of all the girls of detention. And it's just them apparently having another gym class and have to work out. Like, well, can we do this? Is this allowed? I thought detention was like Breakfast Club. You just sit in a room in silence. Apparently you get to abuse these kids and make them sweat and work out.
Well, that was
detention
in the 80s.
Can be whatever
in the
it is.
70s is a
right. Yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
I mean, you're also talking about in a particular scene where the teacher basically slaps the shit out of a student, and you see no recourse to the teacher because you do that now, that teacher's been fired, that sort of thing.
The teacher's fired before the period's even over.
Right. Though, Casey, you did say something that maybe kind of retracts slightly to what I said, is the fact that you're like, the fact that we're seeing this from Carrie's perspective is that maybe it's a matter of we do have those students or whatever that are completely fine and normal and or whatnot, but because of Carrie's upbringing and the way that the mother has treated her, she can't see the good in everybody. She just assumes the evil in everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's something, I know we haven't gotten to the end yet, but in the end, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but my interpretation, especially in the movie, is that there are a few people laughing. But it's like it's
PJ Souls laughing.
Yeah, it's PJ Souls. It's maybe a few other people scattered.
And she's imagining the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's all like in her head, because if you look, all of it is like in that slightly like hazy camera work that he's doing, and it cuts to a shot of John Travolta and Nancy Allen running back behind the stage. And that's the first shot that you've seen since the blood that hasn't been from Carrie's perspective, and it's silent. Like, if all the kids were laughing at that point, you would have heard it in that shot with them running out. That's not like a sound design screw up, because De Palma doesn't do that. Like, I genuinely, it's it's all in her head. Like, a lot, well, not all, but a lot of it is like, she's been mercilessly picked on for so long that's just the straw that breaks the camel's back. In her mind, they all hate her. They're all laughing at her. Her mom has needled that into her brain. And that's the heartbreaking thing about it, is like, there are so many people in that gym at that moment that are now like, oh my God, we have like gone way too far with this girl. And it's too late for them. They have figured this out much too late. You know, I don't know, this book and this movie just...
I think another thing that adds to the relatability of this, no matter what gender you are, what era you grew up in, is Carrie is such a relatable character, because in high school, we all had this mindset of everything everyone says that I don't hear is talking about me, and it's not good. We've all had, everybody has that. Everybody goes through that in high school, and you don't realize that till obviously you're outside of that environment. And looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, everybody probably thinks everybody was talking about them, because there's so many different things you're going through in high school. It's such a weird time. And to think about that's what Carrie's going through, because we all can relate to that. Obviously, not all of us are a woman, where we're going to go through, having our period. 2, not all of us get bullied technically in high school like this. And 3, not all of us have telekinetic powers. I don't know about you guys. I don't, unfortunately. Wish I did.
No, I didn't get those in this lifetime.
I think we all got the short shaft on that, but
no matter how many times I try,
the only thing I'd use it for is to get the Cheetos from the kitchen without having to get up.
That's the most
like,
logical.
that's the only good thing I can think of to do with telekinesis. That's superpowers.
I don't want to get up to cook. I'm just going to do my thing over here and let the telekinesis cook for me.
Well, and something I wanted to mention that kind of ties into what you were saying about how, all the students, were hating it, how we mentioned how even some of the teachers, were showing how mean and how some of it was imagined in their head. But up to that point, there were so many instances that, kind of supported it, just the way she felt. Because even that scene with the kid on the bike, that kind of famous scene that comes shortly thereafter, he's definitely not a high schooler, but yet he's still making fun of the local creepy girl. And so, she definitely was getting it from all sides.
Oh yeah.
And little scenes like I was gonna say, little scenes like that, like show that like Carrie has been talked about before. Like, she is known as the weirdo in school, and then this is like, all right, now we can really pick on the weirdo, because this big episode happened, and now we all have Kindle to throw on the fire, if you will. Not, again, no pun intended. And there's a fire at the end of the cheese. Anyway, Sam, what were you saying?
Nice job, Casey.
Yeah. In the book, it does kind of dive into, Margaret White and her being kind of the pariah of the town. Like, there have been previous incidents with her and Carrie's father, who is now obviously at the time of the main story of this absent. And so the book kind of dives into like the history of Carrie growing up and how her mother raised her, and just the incidents that happened that made the town kind of aware that there was something a little different going on there. And so that's something that's hard to crack cinematically, because the book is written kind of like Dracula, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's told a lot through a series of like court documents and things like that, and like hearings and things. So it's an interesting book, because cinematically you can't quite have all of that in there. But I think what De Palma does so well here is he puts in moments like the bicycle boy. He puts in these like moments that allow you to kind of understand that the town knows Margaret White and Carrie White as these weirdo people. You have Margaret White coming up to the Snell household to, you know, do her religious spiel, and they clearly know that that's what she's here for. I just,
They're like, just give her money so she can leave.
Yep.
Like when she
Yeah,
opens the
and-
door, oh Margaret,
Mhm.
and she just
Yeah.
you know just like she's
Mhm.
dying on the inside. That's one thing I love about some of King's stuff is he writes religious crazy ladies so well. Carrie White's
Yes.
mom, and then Mrs. Carmody from The Mist. You know, the religious nut jobs that you just love to hate.
Mhm.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
that's one thing. Like, when I first watched this movie, Carrie's mom, you know, Mrs. White, I was always like, yeah, she's a little too crazy. She's too much of a movie character. Now watching, it's like, nah, there are people like this. This is
Nope.
pretty spot on. This
She's
is
she's
pretty
pretty
accurate.
crazy. She's
She's
the epitome of crazy.
mm-hmm.
oh no,
That's one of the
believe
things
you
that I
me,
thought
I knew
about.
a lot of people like this in my hometown. A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do
Um,
think there are those times where it feels like she's going completely over the top and cranking it past 11 kind of thing. But you're right. I mean, people like this truly do exist. You know, she almost gets to the point where she almost feels like she's a caricature. But when you sit there and you actually think about it, you're like, no, she's really not, because you get those people that, especially in terms of how this movie has aged, in terms of those people that have gone to go out and do crazy things, whether you're talking like Waco or, you know, West Baptist Church or whatever the heck it's called, all these things that from any side of things and whatnot, you realize that, that they have their good intentions, but they go completely off the rails. And because I always thought about that with the mom. I'm like, mom's crazy, mom's really crazy, but you
John Travolta later joined one of those groups, so it all came full circle.
yeah, right.
yeah,
He hails to the Tom Cruise king.
Yeah,
yeah,
like one thing that really stands out, you know, watching it again this time is how relatable everything is. And if you take out the telekinesis in this movie, it's like, yeah, everything else in this movie is grounded and set in real life, and we know all these people throughout it. And again, that's such a Stephen King thing of, we know all the people, might be heightened to a different reality and not set in our world, but we know all these people and can relate to the characters that way. So when some of the crazy, you know, sci-fi or fantasy elements happen, it's like, well, I still relate to that, even though it is in this heightened reality that we don't live in.
Mm-hmm.
well, it's like you said, just replace the telekinesis with, say, a gun, instead of having to say, this girl gets picked on, this happens to her, she goes to the dance with a gun. And we have stories like that actually happen. I mean, it's such a realistic story that I think we can all actually relate to. Heck, it's actually kind of almost similar to Rage in a kind of way. He really has a way of
Yeah.
writing the young angst and the outrage and the bullying.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, it's so like, I mean, going back to the book, I know we're talking about the movie, but going back to the book, especially, like, it dives into the aftermath of what happens in the wake of Carrie's destruction. And that's almost the most haunting part of the whole book, because you know that there are real towns where something like this has happened. And it's so true to that. It's very morbid, and just it's a very bleak ending. So I guess, like, talking about the book compared to the movie, I've kind of come around now. I feel like King is
It is
maybe
lighter.
right when he says that it lightens it a little bit, because for what it's worth, you don't see the town having to recover after this happens. It ends on the jump scare. It ends on I mean, you kind of see the psychological terror that it has caused on Sue, but that's one person as opposed to an entire town trying to move past this. It's just, it's interesting to see how De Palma kind of scaled this back almost and made it a more intimate story about two female characters, as opposed to King's, like, broader perspective of, this is what happened to a whole town,
Yeah, I think one of the most, like, interesting relationships in this movie is the three-way relationship between Sue, Tommy, and Carrie. of how that
Yeah.
comes to be, because you see that turn with Sue so early on in this movie, how she's like, oh crap, what did I just do? I really messed up this time. And then going to Tommy, her boyfriend, the big popular guy in school, the captain of the football, whatever you want to throw to his character,
And I mean,
that it starts out as, and you see the development of the character, as the movie progresses. It's such an interesting thing to look at, because it's like, yeah, we've seen this done in comedy movies. Like, this is a comedy movie premise. You take the ugly girl to prom and you make her look good, and then the guy will fall in love with her by the end, and the girl that first set it up will change her mind. Whatever. There's so many different premises you could do with this. It's such an interesting way to look at. King was doing this back in the 70s, where we got those movies 10, 20, all the way up 40 years later, we're still getting those
She's
kind of
all that owes King royalties.
Looking at you, Freddie Prinze.
I will say the one thing I do like about this, in terms of like obviously we see the early on progression of Sue's change to basically being the good person that's trying to help her, to convince Tommy that I think you really see him make that flip when they're at the dance and whatnot, and he's just been able to sit down and have that sit down conversation with her, because even to the point, like,
he starts seeing her as an actual person.
Right, exactly. Even to the point when they're up on the stage and you can read the words on his mouth, like, what the hell are you guys think you're doing? As she's basically getting dumped on and whatnot. So it's nice to see that he didn't see that as a ploy like, Nancy would have, but as to what Sue was intending to try to do to make, Carrie feel that she needs to be a part of something and not just be the ridiculed person.
Yeah, and
so I have a question about that scene, since you mentioned him getting hit on the head, and I don't remember it from the book exactly, but what is your take on it? Does the bucket hitting him on the head actually kill him, or no spoilers, or does it just knock him out and he winds up dying in the fire with everybody else, which kind of adds another layer to the tragedy that she's actually responsible for it? I've kind of heard takes on it both ways, and I'm just not sure which one is the correct one.
I mean, I guess my thought is if you're looking at this of the logistics of how much does a metal bucket weigh, it would have had to hit him
from
just
that height.
What, maybe a couple feet. I mean, really, it wouldn't have been something that would have killed him. So I think it would have been more of, if anything, it would have, if anything, it would have got him off guard, that he maybe would have fallen off of the stage or something, to get knocked out, to die in the fire, more than basically dying by an empty bucket.
Death by bucket.
Yeah.
Death by bucket.
I think it is. He's knocked out, and it's also a bit of a plot convenience where he then, when the bucket falls, can't just lean over to Carrie and be like, "Yeah, I had no idea this was going to happen. Sorry." Like, cameo by John.
John's making an appearance.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Yeah, that's what I read it as. It was just he was bumped on the head and then just becomes a casualty. A little bit as a plot convenience, but it works. Again, kind of like the entire use of blood throughout the movie. Yeah, sure, I get what you're doing, King, but it works with inside the movie as well.
I think in the book it explicitly says that he dies before he even hits the floor. Like that the bucket hits him hard enough to where he is dead before he hits the floor. I think that's an actual line in the book. That said, it doesn't really communicate that in the movie to the point where it makes me wonder if in De Palma's version of this story, he's made it that way, where it's like more of a tragedy of he gets knocked out and then he's just in the crossfire. I feel like if he would have wanted to communicate that Tommy was actually dead before all of the massacring started, he would have
shown him.
So, yeah. So to me, I guess, in the book, Tommy's dead. In the movie, Tommy's knocked out and dies in the fire tragically.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. Yeah.
Either way, he's toast by the end of this movie or book.
Yeah.
Literally.
And it's so because okay,
you and your puns tonight, jeez.
That first scene in the classroom with the poem and everything, I mean, he genuinely did write a beautiful poem.
He also said
it's a
he
great
didn't write it.
poem. Yeah,
He
that's
plagiarized
true.
it.
But between that and his like mischievous smile whenever he says something and gets away with it, like you fall in love with Tommy from the minute. Like he's adorable. He's got great hair. He's got dimples. What is there not to like about this guy? Like you fall in love with him.
I was waiting for Sam to go all sort of fangirling over Tommy.
Yeah,
oh, it's hard. It's hard to out-hunk. It's hard to out-hunk John Travolta in the 70s. This guy does it though.
This guy does it, yeah. And like the dancing at the prom when he's like talking to her all sweet, I'm just like,
there's during that prom
Sam's
part,
heart's just melting.
During the prom part where they're just sitting there talking is where I really fall in love with him, because he says stuff of like, he understands he's a high schooler. He knows high school's bullshit. And he just says, yeah, even if we win, we just go up there, they're going to put a crown on us and we're going to look like a bunch of idiots taking a picture. And it's like, yeah, he understands high school at this point, even though he's the most popular kid in high school. I think that's such a great adding that to Carrie, of her looking at him as kind of like this idol of the high school and can't be relatable. And he says all that stuff that just completely brings him back down to earth. And Carrie, I think, especially when she gets up on stage, feels like she belongs, because she kind of realizes this is in a way all bullshit until shit starts hitting the fan once again. And you know, the blood starts flying
once again.
Maybe he understood the assignment because this is like his 5th senior year.
super
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who plagiarizes a poem couldn't possibly be on their 5th senior year.
In 1976, they didn't have all that software to be able to know that somebody stole something from somebody else.
He plagiarized himself, who got it published 5 years earlier when he was 21 years old. So since we're talking about him, there's one part where, spoiler alert, I gave this movie 4.5 stars, because there's one scene in this moment when they're getting ready for prom that I'm like, why is this in this movie? This is too weird, also very unnecessary. And Sam, I think you're going to like this scene. It's the scene where they're all getting tuxes.
No, that's the best scene in the whole movie.
I like
it.
The reason why Sam likes that scene the most is because we all know that if we were all getting tuxes, he'd be the guy in the shirt that doesn't like the ruffles.
Yeah.
We know that's Sam.
That is definitely Sam. But the part of that's okay, let me explain it though. I like everything up in that scene until we get all of a sudden DePalma just hits the fast forward button for no reason.
That is dumb.
And just doesn't let the movie play out. I'm like, your joke already works. Why are you fast forwarding 10 seconds of this movie? This is so weird and out of place for the rest of it. It really pulls me out of the movie during that. And then we're kind of brought back in, especially since we're with two characters we've never met before at that point and really have no bearings on the rest of the movie. It's a fun scene, but it's very unnecessary for the movie, especially when you have the weird editing choice in an otherwise movie that is pretty damn flawless in terms of everything technical in it.
I almost wonder if there was something else that went along with it that they wound up editing out, or something else went wrong with it, and they're like, we've got to do something with this, so what do we do?
Yeah.
We need 10 seconds of runtime somewhere.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I see your issue with it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't take me out. I think it's because I love the scene leading up to it. Sorry, Brian, what?
No, I was gonna say that's where I sit there and I'm like, I have to side with Casey, is that they're having good fun conversation. It was, and it's not like the movie is super long. It's not like it's one of these, nowadays movies where you have a runtime of almost 3 hours. The fast forward button. Right. It's like, the fast forwarding of this would not have added a whole lot to the overall runtime of the movie and whatnot. And if you're literally filming these guys, yeah, unless the fast forwarding is because what they're talking about is that utterly boring that you have to fast forward it, you should have just left it as is. It makes no sense.
They're just talking about the ruffles. The ruffles are funny. I like the scene. I think it adds a little bit of humor before we jump into one of the greatest third acts of all time in cinema, in my opinion. It's such a weird, I don't know, transition into the third act. It's so out of place for me. Whereas I think everything else has a very serious tone, except the goofy stuff with the gym teacher, I think works because we're still also dealing with high school and high schoolers, and there's no weird editing choices. I think that's the biggest thing that pulls me off is the weird editing choice in that Ruffles scene.
And that's fair, but can I tell you why I absolutely love that scene?
You can't because you're wrong. Let's move on.
Go ahead, Sam.
Why do you like that?
I love that scene because I feel like it perfectly. So, like, my favorite types of horror movies, I love teen horror, and I love teen horror that allows the teens to be utterly joyous and the happiest they've ever been right before ripping that rug out from under them. And in Carrie, like, no movie does that better than Carrie, and I think that scene's a big part of it. It's fun. They're goofing off. The fast forwarding, I'm going to try and film critic this into an actual legit choice. The fast forwarding is that they're not appreciating it enough, and it's flying past them, and in less than a day, they're going to be dead. And it's symbolic of that, and that's my reading of it, and it's genius.
I totally buy that. It makes sense to me.
I guess since it doesn't have Ferris Bueller talking to the camera saying life moves by pretty fast, you got to stop and look around every once in a while.
See? Yeah.
Yep.
It was doing Ferris Bueller before Ferris Bueller was doing Ferris Bueller.
I like to think Ferris Bueller went to this high school.
After they rebuilt it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Ferris Bueller's Day Off took place his junior year in 1975. His senior year was 1976. That makes Ferris Bueller's Day Off have a happy ending.
It also makes him really old, which probably lines up for when Matthew Broderick actually was in high school. But I think we got to talk some more before we get into the final act completely. About Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie in this movie and the dynamic between the two. It's as soon as we see those two together, we understand where Carrie stands, where the mom stands, and once we get the backstory of what has happened with the dad, everything makes a lot more sense. Even though it was still working before that, but Carrie just being like, I'm not going to say that, Mom. Like, I don't need to say that. I'll believe the stuff you believe, but I'm just not going to say this stuff because I don't think that way. And I think a lot of people in high school, no matter if it was religion, politics, sports, whether you like Burger King or McDonald's more, and your parents had a different idea of which one you should eat, we all had that type of conversations with our parents. And again, adds to that just palpable relatability.
I want a BK triple stacker, Mama.
You're getting a Big Mac, and you're gonna like it.
Frankly,
Go
Piper
to your
Laurie
Big Mac
in
and
this movie.
We all know that Mama White would not have let her eat fast food. Jeez, get it right.
Eve was weak.
She would have had whatever bologna and cheese sandwich she was in the refrigerator.
Eve was weak, and the raven was called Carbs. Say it.
But no, Piper Laurie, I just love her in this movie because, and I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is. It could be one of those internet stories, but apparently she didn't realize it was like a horror movie. She thought it was a comedy. And so that's why some of her line deliveries are so over the top, is she thought it was supposed to be funny. So apparently she didn't read all the script, just some of her lines. And so she wasn't quite aware what it was supposed to be about, which I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think that would be a great story. Can you imagine delivering the lines, "They're going to see your dirty pillows," because you think you're in a comedy and not realize it's a horror movie.
And you know what's crazy about that is because of that, like, over the top delivery, it's the most terrifying performance in the whole damn movie. Like,
Mhm.
she's utterly like. I used to like I didn't have to always sleep with the lights on after watching this, like when I was in like middle school, early high school. But it was always that like uneasy, like I'd turn the lights off and I'd run to bed and I'd hide under the covers because all I could see was her like smiling face with the knife coming down the stairs, and you're just like,
Mhm.
whoo, just that shot alone is
Great scene.
nightmare fuel.
Mhm.
She's so good in this. And I think it's worth pointing out that both her and Spacek were nominated for Oscars for this movie, which never happens in horror.
Mhm.
And I can't think of two performances that are more deserving because, I mean, both of them are just radiant in this movie. So
I think I can see where De Palma would go up to Piper Laurie and be like, "Yeah, this is a comedy, or at least play it like a comedy." He probably just gave her the line, "They're all gonna laugh at you," and he said that to her, telling her it's gonna be a comedy, so they're all just gonna laugh at her.
You
I
know
think
how
from
hard it is listening to that line and not picture Adam Sandler saying it?
oh, that's all I picture whenever I hear they're all gonna laugh at you.
Every time. I just pictured Adam Sandler. No, they're gonna laugh at you.
I just love the fact that all this kind of King related stuff and De Palma related stuff works itself into the pop culture because there'll be people who will hear Adam Sandler say that and not even realize it's a reference to
Mhm.
Carrie, and I just love that. Whenever there's a reference to anything that we're watching and it's Stephen King related at all, I'll be like, that's King related, and John will just be like, shut up. It's literally everywhere.
It's like the Simpsons did it joke of South Park. King did it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
One of the I don't know this one of the scariest in a movie filled with iconic imagery throughout this movie. The cinematography of Carrie is just insane. How incredible it is, and it has the iconic, De Palma, the split perspective, more so than a lot of his other stuff. This is really where it kind of shines throughout this movie. But there's just a shot in this movie at the end, after the prom, after everything that happens there, where Carrie's back at home and starts throwing the knives, and the mom is just like pinned against the wall, kind of like the Jesus
the
statue
Jesus.
that's in the little closet room, and I'm like, I don't know what it is about that image that's just, I don't know, that gives me like the heebie-jeebies, just the image of that's what obviously Carrie was going for when throwing those knives as well. I don't know. It's just
Like
a terrifying
image of the Jesus
Mhm.
on the wall was burned so deeply into her mind. Because, like, I don't think Carrie is the type. She's not Michael Myers. She's not the type of killer that's going to be like, haha, I'm going to put this body on display
Mhm.
in a funny way. Like, she is fighting for her life in that moment. And it just happens to be the fact that Jesus statue is burned so heavily into her mind that that's how she kills her own mother. That's just, it's such a gnarly, like, little detail that De Palma didn't have to add. Like, it wasn't that way in the King book. In the book, she literally just slows her mom's heart down. Like, she just makes her heart stop, which isn't very cinematic. So I get why they changed it. But then to change it and add in that detail that's so brilliantly constructed, it's just like, my God, this movie, when it deviates from the source material, it does so in a way that's inventive and actually adds to the story, and that's what I love about it the most.
I look at that scene and I think it's the matter of, Carrie's trying to find her way basically out, and the only way that she can do is basically, more or less, she's crucifying her mother
Mhm.
by pinning her up or whatever the case is. But I think part of that is because she feels that's the only way that's going to more or less cleanse her mother and let her mother be happy in death, because she was such a religious individual that nothing less would be suitable for her. So
Well,
that she took
and
it upon
Piper
herself
Laurie
to do it.
plays it in ecstasy too, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, what you're saying is exactly, yeah, because she's, every knife is like a sexual penetration to her. It's like, I don't know. God, the way she plays it is incredible.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's just this movie is filled with incredible performances throughout, and our two female leads just really take the stage. And it's like looking at this movie and the what we've had two reboots and a sequel to Carrie, and it's like at what point it's like why? What else can you do with this material that changes it up? It'd be one thing if there was kind of a loose element to this movie that really doesn't work, especially acting wise, but it just doesn't have that. It's like why touch Carrie anymore when it's done like this movie here?
Two reboots, a sequel, and I heard there's actually a series possibly in the works on FX for it.
What?
So, and a musical. You can't forget the musical. So
Yes, the stage musical. Oh my
it's
god.
literally been translated so many times in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything needs to be turned
And-
into a musical at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the Netflix series. I think it's called I Am Not Okay With This with Sophia Lillis. But it's definitely like very much inspired by Carrie. And I'm so upset that Netflix canceled it after one season because
That's what they do.
Yeah, that's what they do. They
needed to loosen up some of that earmarked money so they could pay Dwayne the Rock Johnson for Red Notice.
Yeah. So we'll
I
get
thought it was
3
Carol
more Red
Baskin from
Notice
Tiger King.
movies, but
And more Tiger King.
Mm-hmm.
oh
Because
god.
we needed more Tiger
Seriously.
King.
I
I
don't
mean,
even
not
know
to
I
go on a
have
Tiger
Netflix
King
anymore.
tangent, but Tiger King season 2 is actually all right. It is all right. It's pretty good.
I just refuse to watch it. I just don't care. I can't.
I don't care. That's why I'm glad this isn't a Tiger King podcast, because Sam and I would be like, this is all Casey for an hour.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's all right. It's kind of like watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, except the like real life version of that. Of like all these people are horrible, but I can't look away.
Nice.
Speaking of all these horrible people, the final act of this movie, John Travolta, Nancy Allen finally get their comeuppance by the end of this movie, in a very quick fashion. I always forget how quick that moment of the movie is. Of they're pretty much just driving down the street. Carrie's walking home after massacring the entire school, and just flips the car and then makes it explode and continues her way home. Is it what's the difference in the book from that?
Oh,
I
in
think
the
the book's a
book,
little
she
more
goes all
graphic.
around town. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The book's
it's a much.
the book doesn't she put him into a wall in the book?
Yeah, I believe she actually like throws the whole car into a wall. I don't know if it's actually at like a gas station or something. But yeah, like she destroys like a lot of like blocks and blocks of the town. Like it's really much more devastation in the book.
Yeah, like it's not just the prom and her house. It's literally like the whole way home.
All the way
She's
she goes.
destroying things and killing people. I mean, the book has a massive body count. Yeah.
And if they would have just left her alone, on her way home from the prom in the movie, if they would have just not tried to like do anything to her and driven away, they would have been fine. But their own, need to try and exact revenge on her is what wound up getting them in the end. So just kind of that's another theme that kind of shows up in King's work, is a lot of the bad guys are undone by their own hubris, and it was true for them. They would have been fine if they would have just kept going.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other scenes you guys want to bring up from the movie that we have not touched on yet at all?
The one that traumatized me. Oh, sorry.
No,
and
you
still
go.
To this day, I hate watching it to this day, is the one with the pig, of course, when they're getting the blood and they're doing the slaughtering the pig. Let me show you how it's done. And then she's so into doing it. And it's like, ugh. I mean, it just really makes you hate those people, which is great. That's what they're going for in the movie. You really want to hate those people. But boy, that really cements the deal for me. And it's really hard to watch even to this day.
Yeah, that's the Sam goes and gets popcorn scene of this movie. I'm like, I just don't need to watch this. I can't, I was just gonna bring up the scene between Carrie and her mom when she tells her like she's going to prom and they have that argument. I just love how the house is lit in general, but in that scene it really stands out because there's all this orange light pouring in through the outside, through the windows, and it just gives the whole place a hellish glow. which I just think is really interesting, being, you know, the obvious holier than thou Margaret White lives in a house that literally looks like what I would imagine hell does. And I think the dynamic between Spacek and Laurie is at its best in that scene where, you know, they're going toe to toe. Carrie has finally started getting a little more confidence. Like, Tommy seems to actually want to go to prom with her. She's starting to realize maybe people might like me. And her mom's getting ready to, like, her mom wants to take that away, and she's just not having it. And I just think that scene is where both of them are just at their absolute best on an acting level. I don't feel like it's campy. I don't feel like it's as over the top as a lot of other scenes in the movie. It's very much like, it's kind of this grounded, like, no, this is two characters having a very real conversation in the middle of this movie. And it's, I don't know, it's just such a turning point for Carrie that I think it'd be remiss if I didn't bring up that particular scene. Because I love that one. I love that one. I love when she shuts all the windows and it's the devil's power. It's like, not the devil, just me. And I'm just like, you tell her, Carrie, like, I don't know. That scene just gets me every time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that really ties into the main theme. King says the main theme of the book is feminism. And in that scene, it's, you know, she's literally a woman claiming her power. And I mean, that just really ties into it really well.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the last part of the movie, the final dream sequence. That's kind of a controversial one. What are your guys' thoughts? I think it works pretty well, at least for the Sue character, to give her a closure in the entire storyline of Carrie, and also having this kind of legacy that Carrie now leaves behind in this town of, yeah, this is what happened when this girl was bullied this much. She's not really gone. You need to remember her type of scenario at the end of this movie.
Yeah, I personally love it. I kind of brought it up earlier where, you know, King's book deals with a lot of the aftermath with the whole town. This feels like De Palma, you know, making the aftermath a little more personal to one of our main characters in Sue. And I'm a sucker for horror movies, so like the last little jump scare always, I like that, you know. I mean, it's been ripped off from this movie in so many others, especially like slasher movies. This isn't even a slasher movie, and like every slasher has one of those now. Friday the 13th is notorious for that, and you can't tell me they would have done that if Carrie hadn't come first, you know.
The original Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, was directly inspired by this.
Yeah,
the ending of that.
Sean Cunningham has outright said he stole, well, he obviously stole Halloween for the premise of Friday the 13th. He's like, yeah, I also stole the ending of Carrie for my movie too.
Yeah, because both Nightmare and Friday end in like a dreamlike sequence, followed by an abrupt, like, oh, we're back in the shit type of thing. And so I love that ending. I think it's solid. That combined with the score and Sue like screaming while her mom tries to calm her down, it literally sends chills down my spine. And that's what the movie leaves you with. You know, like, it's such an effective ending because it makes my skin crawl. Because Amy Irving is so freaking convincing as someone who would have PTSD from that experience. And I think it's brilliant. I don't understand why people don't like it. So if someone doesn't like it here, I would be very curious as to why. Like, because I genuinely think I think it's brilliant.
I thought it was a great ending as well. I mean, you know, I like a good jump scare. So, you know, I don't think they could do the ending of the book for a movie quite the same way. So, that's why a lot of
Mhm.
King's endings seem to always get changed, because you can't always end them the way he does in the book. It's just not feasible. It doesn't translate as well from the written word. So I thought it was great. I like that, that last little jump scare. I thought they did it really well. I know it's not the original ending that they wanted, but I don't remember what the original ending was supposed to be, but I like it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly better than the ending of the 2013 one, but we won't go into that again.
I'd never seen it.
Although
You're
I
really
like
not
Julianne
missing
Moore as
anything.
Margaret White. I thought she did well in
Oh
that.
God, she's like maybe the best part of that movie. She's really good.
Who?
Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore as Margaret
Mhm.
White. She's good. She doesn't try to do Piper Laurie's thing. Like, she tries to do her own thing entirely, and like she comes up with an equally terrifying but compelling for very different reasons villain. Like, yeah. Julianne Moore puts in tremendous work in that movie. I just wish the rest of the movie had put in the work to be as good as she is.
All right, boys, let's get into our final thoughts and the final question. If you're going to pair Carrie with another movie for your Ultimates double feature, Carrie and blank, what are you going to pair it with? I'll start first. I think Carrie is a damn near masterpiece of horror. I think it's such a iconic movie that just stands the test of time and so relatable, has so many great shots, moments, characters, acting, pretty much everything about this movie it just works, and you can feel it coming off the screen. Aside from that one fast forward like 10-second scene, I think this movie is perfect. So the movie I'm going to pair it with, I'm going to go with a 1970s PJ Souls horror double feature. I'm going to watch Carrie and Halloween back to back.
Nice.
Fun.
Yeah. I mean, I love this movie. I love this book. I think the movie is like a 5 out of 5 straight on masterpiece. I genuinely, I've watched this movie. I can't even tell you how many times. I tried to get everybody I knew to watch it in high school, and yeah, it never loses its impact for me. If anything, it's just grown more impactful over the years. If I were to pair this with another movie, I'm gonna go with a Stephen King double feature, both with religious, not undertones. They're overtones when it comes to King's work. I'm gonna go with Frank Darabont's The Mist from 2007, the black and white version, obviously, because you can't watch that in color now that the black and white version's out. Yeah, I just think both of them have similar religious themes, and they're just two of my favorite King adaptations in general, two of my favorite King stories in general. And so, yeah, I'd pair Carrie with The Mist and have the feel bad movie event of the weekend.
There you go.
I guess I can't say I feel as strongly as either one of you two, but I kind of figured that would be the case since I know you two are the horror nerds of our group. That's just come to be expected and whatnot. I do think that whole fast forward thing right there alone is enough just to annoy, if you're going to take anything off of, a star rating and whatnot. But I'd say probably for me, like around a 3.5. Because I think what De Palma does is very, very good. My problem is with some of the supporting characters and the actors that are essentially a part of the group that is, bullying Carrie are just kind of half-assed, and then they just some of them just feel like filler, especially like the kid who wants to pick up uh, the ballot so they can rig the prom election, that sort of thing. Just for me, it's fine. Like I applaud for what De Palma did because, like you said, I mean, there's clearly been movies since then that have ripped off and pay homage to Carrie, not
Borrowed
ripping off,
liberally.
borrowed liberally.
Friday the 13th ripped it off.
Right. To in regards to this movie, and I do think we do have some very good solid performances. It's my issues with a lot of the supporting performances. That being said, I think one of the first ones that I think of in terms of early King adaptations that I think would pair very nicely with this would be this and a very young Drew Barrymore in Firestarter. Just
Yeah.
because, you want to
Good
see Drew
choices.
Barrymore light shit up.
Ooh,
Classics.
depending on what Ken does as his double feature, I have another double feature. I'm gonna wait.
Well,
'cause I don't
mine is
know.
also going to be a double feature or possibly a triple feature. I consider it the Holy
Ooh.
Trinity of King. It's his first 3 books, which is Carrie, Salem's Lot, and The Shining. And
I
so
was gonna say Salem's Lot would pair well. Yes.
so any of those 3, I think you could mix and match and do a really good job with. So I consider that the
Heck
Holy
yeah.
Trinity of King.
And The Shining from 8. Oh God, yeah.
Mhm.
Now, there's
Oh,
a fun one. If
excellent.
you do watch The Shining, there's a theory that you should watch it with the perspective that none of it is actually real and it's Wendy having a mental breakdown. There's a video on YouTube you should
Ooh.
check out that really goes into it detail, because there's all sorts of scenes, like in certain scenes where furniture is just suddenly not there and moved. And they're like, Kubrick is such a particular kind of director, that would never happen. That's not going to be a mistake. That happened on purpose. And so, like, whenever there's furniture in the wrong place, or, light switches will move from one wall to another in the same scene suddenly, it's Wendy misremembering things. And so all the ghosts and stuff weren't really happening. It was really her. And she actually winds up killing Jack and dragging him out to the maze. It's her the entire time, just having a mental breakdown. Like, even Danny having the shining talking to Tony isn't real. That's all her imagining it. And it just gives you a whole new spin on it. So it's kind of really cool. You should check that out.
See,
Boy,
that's
I
what I
bet you
love
Shelley
about The
Duvall
Shining.
would love
'cause it's
that
like-
ending.
Or she
That's
loved
what
that
I love
movie
about
anyway.
The Shining, though. It's such a Russian nesting doll of a movie. Like, there's so many different perspectives you can come at that movie from. I love it.
Even look at all the conspiracies of the Room 237 documentary of
Yeah.
where did you get this from? What? But it's like, at least, for the millionth time you watch Kubrick's The Shining, it's like, well, at least I can watch it through a different perspective this time. Gives you an excuse to rewatch The Shining as if you need one.
Exactly.
The less said about the Mick Garris, Stephen King weird TV movie version, the better.
I like parts
I
of it.
actually had the chance to go to the Stanley Hotel this summer, and where they actually filmed the Garris TV version of it. And they had like the miniature house they featured there, and some of the props on the wall, and the movie poster for it. So they really went all out. Like, it was a nice place to go visit. If you're a King fan or a Ghost fan, definitely worth it. If you're going there for a nice hotel stay, it's probably not the best, but it was definitely fun. It was a fun experience. And they had all sorts of King references. And that's where this hat came from. John got it for me for Christmas. So it was definitely worth it.
That's awesome.
Here you go.
I love that.
Nice. That's the one. I don't have a copy of it. I've been looking.
I don't hate that miniseries. I really
don't either. So many people like to give me so much shit about liking this version of
I genuinely think Alex Weber is a very good Jack Torrance. I like Alex Weber in that miniseries.
Steven Weber.
Or Steven Weber, yeah.
We'll save the Shining miniseries for a Mick Garris month down the road, where we just talk about all his Stephen King TV adaptations that he did.
Hell, let's just do a Stephen King year. We can have Ken on every episode. This was so much fun. Do we have to end this episode? Can we just keep talking?
Unfortunately, we do have to end this episode. So this has been our episode on Carrie, which is where is this movie streaming right now? Does anyone?
I believe it's on Prime.
It's not on Prime. The only place I could find it was with ads with Tubi.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I believe there is we are at the 45th anniversary of this movie this year as well. So I know there was a 45th anniversary.
It makes me feel old. Yes, Casey. It makes me feel old.
So.
Good.
I don't know if
it is actually on Prime.
So.
And so is The Rage Carrie too. So if you really want to check that one out,
just watch
I might actually have to rewatch The Rage, because I do that. I do dig that. I have the I don't know if there's like a new physical media release, but I have
I thought there was.
I have the Shout Factory, the now out of print Blu-ray. I picked it up like on sale because it was like these won't be in print, or this won't be in print for long, and it was like on clearance. And so I think I ended up getting the Blu-ray for like less than $15.
I've got my VHS copy of Carrie, and then the
I
DVD of
love
the
it.
2013 remake.
Nice.
That's what I was thinking of. I think the version you have, Sam, is the 40th anniversary one.
Oh,
Yeah.
hey, Ken there.
Yeah.
Your Prime version is the 2020.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Ah.
sneaky. That one might actually, I haven't seen that one since it originally aired. I might have to go back and watch that anyway.
I'm gonna tell you, I
Yeah.
didn't know that existed, and it's almost 20 years old.
Mhm.
And that's why I was surprised when they did the 2013 remake, because I'm like, the other remake was just like 10 years ago. That just seems really close together. And it was a
I
TV
think
movie.
It wasn't.
I think
Yeah,
and
it
I
was a
think
TV
part of it
movie,
though
wasn't
is I think part of it also too is especially 2013. We're not too long after Kick-Ass and Chloe Moretz starting to make a name for herself. They're like,
Mhm.
what can we throw her in that would be a horror staple that we could try to sell? Is exactly what it
Hey.
is.
Money.
Let's make the
Yep.
same movie with the same script, but add in a scene where they put the video on YouTube.
Yep.
Well,
God,
all right.
I love Kimberly Pierce as a director too. That movie
Sam,
should have been so much
we're gonna
better.
wrap this up. We're not ever gonna talk about the 2013 Carrie ever again. Never.
Everybody's gonna be like, why is this an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Did we start doing news again?
Because Carrie's a movie that's kind of endless things you can talk about with this movie. And yeah, this was a ton of fun. Let's jump into the plugs though for the show as we're gonna wrap this thing up. If you want to check this this entire De Palma series out, you can so on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and on YouTube. Just simply search Backlot 605. Hit the subscribe button. We're going to be talking De Palma all month long. So we're talking next week. We're talking Phantom of the Paradise. Alongside Andy Heller, a fat dude digs flicks, and then we're talking The Fury with Tom Devine, and we're talking Blowout with Blake Ginnathan in our final episode of the year. So quite the De Palma lineup here coming up for the rest of the month. Brian, where can they find us on social media?
They can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd HQ, all at Backlot 605. On Facebook, we also have the South Dakota Film Community Group. Join the conversation. Film lovers, film enthusiasts, people like us, filmmakers even. Join the conversation. We'd love to just talk about movies. Samuel, what else have we got?
And if you like this and you want more, we got 4 bonus episodes for you each month coming at you on Patreon, patreon.com/backlot605. This month, we've got a couple of holiday movies, a new release straight streaming. We will be dropping a Home Sweet Home Alone episode this week. Next week, we will be dropping the much more pleasant discussion, I'm sure, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And then after
Spider-Man.
that, we've got that Spider-Man movie that's coming out. Does anybody know about that? Is that a... Yeah.
I've heard of it.
That's it.
That indie
What is
movie,
that?
Spider-Man?
Oh,
Yeah.
that little
I'm not
indie
familiar
film?
with that.
The
It's
little
the
indie
human
film?
spider.
Some up-and-coming actor named Thomas Holland is in it.
Oh, I'm not familiar with him.
I hear
Yeah,
he's
me-
Australian.
Yeah, so we're going to do Spider-Man No Way Home, and then we're also going to be capping off the month with The Matrix Resurrections. Yeah, and that's all going to be on Patreon, so for $5 a month, you can get 4 extra episodes and a bunch of other fun little bonus goodies too. So check us out there.
All right. Ken, where can the people out there find you online?
I'm on Instagram under Ken's King Collection, where I post videos and photos of my collection. I am also on YouTube under the same handle, and I'm on Twitter under Ken's Kingdom 77. So if anyone wants to reach out or like or join or subscribe, I'm out there. I try and post fairly regularly, but it comes and goes. I tried doing Halloween posts and only made it about half the month before I said nope, done with that.
Well, Ken, this has been awesome. Next time we have a Stephen King movie, there's no one else we're gonna ask to be on that. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Absolutely been a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thanks,
much
Ken.
for having me.
Absolutely.
All right. So for Sam Lenz, Brian Mensing, I am Casey Cutlerman. We will check y'all out next time on the backlot of where? South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Peace.
Bye.